Cradle, Dogs of Fount, Chapter 15. I didn't say I was bored, Heather corrected. I said I can't wait to get there. Well, that's kind of the same thing, right? Nate asked. He could see it around her eyes. She was starting to get genuinely annoyed. No, actually it's not, and I really don't see the big deal you're imagining now. Nate thought better of it and shrugged. The atmosphere of Griffin Park felt wide open and welcoming. Maybe Nate thought so for the billowing dresses some of the women wore, or the densely planted trees with branches sighing all around. The scent of fabric softener coming from an apartment building to the east of the street made Nate think of his childhood home in Dearden, when his mother would wash on Sundays. Yes, Nate always approved of the neighborhood Griffin Park. He'd just never spent more than a couple hours here at one time in any point of his life in Fount. What was also a bit conflicting is what Griffin Park hid. It was the reason for Nate and Heather even coming here at all while risking their necks. No, neither of them had seen it with their own eyes, but so far nothing refuted its existence in the light of documents or conversation. That guy over there across the street, Heather stated. Yeah, I saw him. The man was in a suit, smoking a cigar. He seemed out of place indeed, but he's legit. He just came out the shoe store. Coincidence. Heather shot Nate a look. Nate held her brown eyes to assure her. She agreed. She looked back toward the actual park they were approaching. The cherry blossoms flanked them on the west, and a wide open and green field spread out far towards the west, just a little bit north of where they were. A moderately sized pond with a stone swan shooting water to the sky and slapping back down onto the surface was within 20 yards of the couple. Surprisingly, Nate and Heather were the only visible people in this area of the park, and right on cue, she looked back at Nate again. We're fine, heads on a swivel, he said. They were heading toward York University's campus, still part of Griffin Park. A baking supply store in the midst of the university's city walk called Missy's was where they would enter. The tip of Nate's pistol was rubbing against a sensitive part of the smaller's back almost to the point of rawness. He couldn't allow his hands to go near it, however, for that would send up red flags even to a normal civilian. Heather was only carrying her ankle piece today, which was odd because she didn't seem less paranoid today than she was normally. Let's sit by this pond. I want to smoke, Nate said, sitting down on the grass already. Heather quickly sat down too, a few feet away. She sighed and smoothed back her ponytail. Nate opened a new pack, unraveling the cellophane with the drawstring. Horrible habit, I know. I'm long overdue for my lung cancer vaccine, Nate said and then lit up. He looked over at Heather. She was looking towards the pond with her hands between her mid-thigh. Yet you keep on smoking. It's a weakness, you know, Heather replied. I never asked. Did you used to smoke? Nah, my mom would have kicked my... She chuckled. Couldn't even go to parties with boys until I was in my teens. Of course I was in a heap not too long after. Yeah, Nate sighed. This sort of place makes you forget about the real world. So nice, so secure. No one in desperation, Heather thought out loud. Just the old world on top of the new one. You think? Are you serious, Nate asked. I'm just messing with you. You were thinking I was slipping, right? Heather chuckled again. Yeah, I did. You like it here though, right? Honestly, yes. But on the other hand, I know about the suffering this place causes. It's like a cloud covering the effing sun, you know? They sat in silence for a few moments, Nate taking a puff now and then. The water was still smacking into the pond, relaxing them both. Nate looked around the park and then spat over his shoulder, away from Heather. He looked to her and they nodded. They stood up and brushed themselves off and started walking north again. They made it to the edge of the campus. The buildings looked pleasantly weathered with an earthen tone. Quaint bookstores, textbook stores, cafes, and the sort were neatly kept. There was absolutely no litter on the street or sidewalks. People adored York University, only second to Dearden University. Bolton Clay wrote his manifesto, New World 2, here in the dorms of early York. It was the roadmap that Fount used in solidifying a self-sustaining society after almost a century of factions and even dueling republics. Clay died fairly early in his late 50s, but had fathered 11 children who passed down his noble-like surname. Nate had a respect for the man as a visionary, but with the world revealed to him the way it was now, the man still didn't think out everything. Nate spotted 2 black Omni heroes approaching from the west. His heart started to pump and he was already looking for cover. Heather was leading them already to a recessed doorway of a nearby flat. However, the 2 heroes passed them without even slowing down and made their way down the street, disappearing over the crest of the hill. Nate shook his head and put his hands on his hips to catch his breath. Heather billowed her shirt to stop from sweating too much, and they paused in front of the 3-story flat until they were ready to move again. They kept up a good pace all the way towards the city walk. They stopped 2 blocks away from Missy's and meandered around the general neighborhood to see if they had any followers. It looked clear, and they both knew the longer they hung around near the entrance, the more attention they would draw. Ready? Nate asked, and Heather nodded. They walked up to the gentle glow coming out of Missy's front windows and walked through the door with no hesitation. Inside there was an almost countless assortment of baking accessories, machines, supplies of all kinds, even flour. Nate and Heather smiled at the elderly woman with large curls, and the woman smiled warmly. She was tough to read. Nate and Heather stayed close to each other, playing the couple. Heather picked up a mixing bowl and looked at the price on the bottom. $9.99, hon? Heather asked. You're baking the cake, not me. If you want it, get it, he replied. So damn carefree all the time, she shook her head. She turned around and smiled again at the woman. Ma'am, where do you keep your angel food mixes? Bleached? The woman asked with a pregnant look in her eyes. No, whole, Heather enunciated very clearly. The woman looked at Nate first, and then longer at Heather. The clerk adjusted her glasses and cleared her throat. Back corner, over there. She pointed to the very back of the store, with half of the view of the aisle blocked by shelves. Nate and Heather nodded and promptly made their way to the back corner of the store. They faced a rather normal shelf setup of all sorts of flours and mixes. Nate thought he was beginning to sense a trap just when the shelf that was level with his midriff slid a few inches to the left, revealing a brass doorknob. He quickly turned it, and the whole shelf setup swung back with the door, and they found themselves in a rather tight hallway. The door shut electronically with a numb click. Just ahead was a brightly lit stairway going down. Nate led them down with his head nearly touching the fluorescent tube mounted above. In the basement hallway there were office-like sounds, the clattering of computer keyboards, coughs and sniffs, printers grinding and screeching. The walls were painted dark chocolate brown, and there were doorways on either side all the way down the hallway. It was rather dim, with normal light bulbs hanging from the ceiling every 10 feet or so. A tan-skinned man in his early 30s made his way into the hall and towards the 2. His curly hair shined in the light, and the glare shone on his glasses. Nathaniel? Heather? He asked. Nate and Heather, Nate responded with a smile. The man smiled and chinned for them to follow. Spencer Tyke, he said, and pronounced his last name, Tyke. They followed him a substantial way down the hallway and entered behind him an office in the left wall. Sit. We've got plenty to discuss, guys, Spencer said. There were 2 gray plaid cushioned chairs in front of his messy desk. They all sat. Tyke stared at his computer monitor for a moment and then pressed a few keys. He cracked his knuckles and smiled momentarily. How big was it? Tyke asked. Nate and Heather were at a loss. The underground city, Tyke added. Oh, it was big enough, you know. It seems to be working for him, Nate answered. You got in through a waterfall, Tyke asked. Of sorts. Nate was beginning to get annoyed, but was willing to play on, for this man was integral. It was like a drainage loop sort of thing. Was he scary, like crazy or something? Not, you mean Ryan Cephas? No, not at all. He was a nerd, like a normal nerd, Nate answered. Heather gave Nate a blazing look. No offense, man. I mean, he was. Heather put her face in her palm. None taken, bro. And you bombed your way out. Yeah, we did. Escaped by the skin of our damn teeth, Nate said, grinning. Tyke looked to be in deep thought and sat back in his chair, but he was smirking a bit too. Nate looked at Heather for a moment. She pursed her lips and raised her eyebrows, acknowledging the awkwardness. He's progressed, Tyke said gravely. He's really pushing to embed his network in Fount, and the Hall is letting it happen. You talking cameras and stuff? Nate asked. Dude, you are thinking too small, Tyke said. I can think pretty big. Don't challenge me, Nate answered. By all means, try, Tyke pressed. Sterilization by radio waves, time manipulation, weather control, Nate guessed. Wow, you're pretty close, but that stuff is probably in his long game. Right now, he's trying to set the foundation. He wants a donut. Nate looked at Heather. She had no clue either. A donut, you say? Nate asked. Think about it this way. In the decline of the old civilization, there was a large gap in income spread over the globe. Whereas before there was the classical lower, middle, and upper classes. As the decades passed, there was a widening hole in the middle, and that is to say the rich kept amassing wealth, and the poor were being dried out. Then the world simply went to crap, and then the pandemic hit. But it is the destabilization Cephas wants. Everyone in Fount can find work if they want to. There's barely any truly super rich and barely any abject poor. This is how we sustain. Take that balance out and those in power develop an iron fist. Cephas is trying to rule. That's what he wants. Poverty spread deep enough entrenches power, Tyke laid it out. But why? Aren't things fine the way they are? Nate asked. Yes, you are right. This is very suspicious to everyone in the know. Tyke took off his big glasses, huffed on them, and wiped them with his sweater vest. The world is big, Nate. We may be a pawn in a race for power. He smirked and put back on his glasses. No BS. I was in space for a couple minutes, Nate said. I saw lights in faraway places, and more than I would have guessed. Spencer nodded. Right. It is indeed a puzzle that we are working on now. This is all just to say that the Hall and all the a-holes in Fount are secondary. We have to stop Cephas or else. What do you want us to do? Heather asked. Well, you two are the pioneers. We want you to go back, Tyke answered. Heather sat up from her former slouch and Nate sat back. The place is sewn up, man, Heather said. I bet its security has been tripled since we broke out. Heather, we don't have a choice. This could be the beginning of the end of peace. Crap, freedom. Don't be fooled by the beauty of Fount. We are one disaster away from chaos after that damn nuke they dropped on you. People are tense. They go shopping and dine out to ease their nerves, but it's definitely in the air. What? Heather asked. Fear, Tyke answered. Say we actually survive and make it back in the city, what then, she asked. Place a bot in the core network. Hide a broadcast hub so we can sabotage the AI and the other, well, software if you can call it that anymore, Tyke answered. And that will take him down? Nate asked. It will slow the heck out of his plans and give us a chance to defend the heap and of course, Fount. It sounds like it would be easier just to kill him, Nate said. I mean, his second in command is nowhere near as smart as he is. Like cutting the head off a snake, you know? Yeah, that would be the case, but he is fortified. Tyke scratched his head. I mean, heavily fortified. Bullets point blank to his head won't kill him. Nanomachines so developed that we can't even imagine how to manufacture in the top research labs. But Meade killed a judge with a gun, Nate broached. There was a biofield around his house to stop Cephas from looking into his thoughts, and Meade knew that. That field disables the nanofield that stops bullets. Nate and Heather were taken aback. Is he immortal? Nate asked. I'll just say it'll take years of studies to find a chink big enough to take him out. And that is exactly why you need to get back in that damn city. The more we know, the more of a chance to end his threat. Well, we know what we need to do on our end. What about yours? Heather asked. Are you ready? Do you have your stuff in place? Well, almost. We need a couple weeks at least to develop the bots and other tech. We got the general on our man, Heather said. We don't have that kind of time. Yes, the general, Arturo Meade, Tyke said, and started tapping his desk with a blue ballpoint. What can I say? You are going to have to make do. We can't go at ciphers with less than the absolute best. That's the reality. Heather rolled her eyes. Nate looked at her and patted her hand. Look, why don't you go back to the heap and gather yourself? Prepare, get your best gear and come back. It's not that easy of a trip. There's bears in the forest and mud pits. We walked miles and miles on foot through that crap. Trust us. We've thought about that, Nate explained. I don't have any ideas. You're just going to have to figure something out. We just aren't ready. Do you have anything you can offer the general to get it on his good side? Nate frowned in thought and nodded while thinking. I like the way you think. I might have a couple options. Nate could feel Heather looking at him. That's what I'm here for, Tyke said. He stood up and raised his finger. Beer? Please, Heather asked. Tyke smiled and left the office.